Welcome to the Only You podcast, where there's a full moon out tonight. There was a blood moon, a pink moon, a gray moon, a green moon last night. I don't know what it was, but it was wild looking. I know y'all seen it. Thank you for tuning in. Today, I'm going to be going over a book with you that I found called An Inquiry into the Nature and Causes of Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith. Thank you guys. This is my second year of doing this podcast. I appreciate you tuning in. Adam Smith, he was baptized June 16th in 1723, but he was actually born on June 5th. He unfortunately died on July 17th, 1790. He was actually a Scottish economist and philosopher. Adam Smith was a pioneer in the thinking of political economy and key figure during the Scottish Enlightenment. And if you don't know what the Scottish Enlightenment is, it was the period in the 18th and 19th century Scotland characterized by an outpouring of intellectual and scientific accomplishments. By the 18th century, Scotland had a network of parish schools in the Scottish lowlands and 5 universities. The Enlightenment culture was based on close readings of new books, and intense discussions took place daily at such intellectual gathering places in Edinburgh as the Select Society and later the Poker Club, as well as within Scotland's ancient universities like St. Andrews, Glasgow, Edinburgh, King's College, etc. Thank you guys for tuning in. We're talking about Adam Smith right now. He's the writer of An Inquiry into the Nature and Causes of the Wealth of Nations. The latter, often abbreviated as just the Wealth of Nations, is what the book is called. But in reality, the full title is what I just read to you. It's considered his magnum opus. And do you know what a magnum opus is? I hope that's a masterpiece. Magnum opus is Latin for great work, if you didn't know that. Smith refuses to explain the distribution of wealth and power in terms of God's will, and instead appeals to natural, political, social, economic, and technological factors and interactions between them. In his work, Smith introduced, among others, the theory of absolute advantage. In his economics, the principle of absolute advantage is the ability of a party, an individual or firm or country to produce a good or service more efficiently than its predecessors. So I think that's pretty important. He went to school at the classic. He went to school at the University of Glasgow and Oxford. Very highly intelligent guy, you guys, Adam Smith was. He studied social philosophy at the University of Glasgow, like I just said, in Oxford, where he was one of the first students to benefit from scholarships set up by fellow Scott John Snell. Schnell is German for now. After graduating, he delivered a successful series of public lectures at the University of Edinburgh, leading him to collaborate with David Hume during the Scottish Enlightenment that I told you about earlier. Smith obtained a professorship at Glasgow, teaching moral philosophy, and during this time wrote and published The Theory of Moral Sentiments. That's another one you guys can check out of his books, his writings, and you could probably find... I know the book I'm getting ready to read to you guys, I picked it up for 99 cents, and it was on Google, Barnes & Noble, everywhere for like 99 cents, and it's a pretty good read. There's a lot of awesome stuff in here, about mercantilism, free market, division of labor, rational self-interest, and all kinds of other stuff. In Adam Smith's early life, he was born in Kirkcaldy in Fife, Scotland. Fife. Kind of cool, right? His father also, Adam Smith, was a Scottish writer to the Sonnet, senior solicitor, advocate, and prosecutor, judge advocate, and also served as comptroller of the customs in Kirkcaldy. That's pretty cool. His dad was a great guy, sounds like. Smith's mother was born Margaret Douglas, daughter of the landed Robert Douglas of Fife. She married Smith's father in 1720. 2 months before Smith was born, his father died, leaving his mother a widow. That's sad. The date of Smith's baptism into the Church of Scotland was on June 5th, 1723. Although few events in Smith's early childhood are known, the Scottish journalist John Ray Smith, biographer, recorded that Smith was abducted by Romani at the age of 3 and released when others went to rescue him. Smith was closer to his mother, who probably encouraged him to pursue his scholarly ambitions. He attended the Borough School of Kirkcaldy, which that's his hometown, you guys, Kirkcaldy. Thank you guys for tuning in. This is the Only You podcast, and today we are talking about Adam Smith and his book, An Inquiry into the Nature and Causes of the Wealth of Nations. And I don't know, I want to tell you guys, or talk about the top 10 richest countries in the world by GDP, or per capita. The top 10 richest countries, according to the IMF, including Brunei, the United States, and Norway. The leader of this list in 2022 is a small European country, actually, you guys. Kind of interesting. Based on this indicator, a rating of the richest countries are formed. The gross product per capita reflects the well-being of the country's citizens. Denmark has a $68,094 GDP per capita. The economy of Denmark is dominated by the service sector with 80% of all jobs. They have no taxes in Denmark. The universities there are free. The U.S. actually has borrowed more money from Denmark than any other country in the world. And during our country's, early years, this Denmark actually backed us up completely with, I believe, John Adams. John Adams used to travel to Denmark and do all the negotiating for borrowing money. And that's how we actually, these trillions of dollars in debt and all this crap, boom, Denmark, baby. The economy is also highly dependent on foreign trade. Denmark's imports constitute about half of the GDP, according to statistics in Denmark. The average monthly wage in the country is $44,514 before taxes. Average monthly in this country. Wow. In 2020, Danes had an average net worth of $1,190,730. Or in euros, that'd be 160,000. After subtracting liabilities from assets, Forbes has counted 9 billionaires in Denmark, 4 of which are Lego company shareholders. Cool, man. Let's build it up. I know the pieces fit. According to the U.S. News and World Report, Denmark is the second best country in the quality of life. Life expectancy in Denmark is 83.4 years for females and 79.6 years for males. It's not very easy to move to Denmark, by the way. To do so, you will need to find solid grounds. Denmark issues residency permits to those who have found a job in the country, entered a Danish university, or married a Danish citizen, similar to the U.S. Number 9 is Iceland with a 74,417 GDP per capita. The largest sector of Icelandic economy is tourism. It accounts for about 1/3 of the GDP. Other vital sectors are aluminum smelting and fishing. Iceland's strongest point is, isn't Iceland like the smallest country in the world? I can't remember. Something like that. What's the capital of Iceland, guys? Yeah, it's Reykjavik. Get it right. More than 99% of electricity is produced from renewable sources of energy. About 73% comes from hydropower and 27% from geothermal power. Iceland is the largest electricity producer per capita, which makes electricity relatively cheap there and allows producing a large number of aluminum products for export. The average salary in Iceland is 770,000, or in euros, 5,500 per month. So that last number 10, Denmark, that was like real. It's a lot of money to be made over there. To move to Iceland, you can enter an Icelandic university or get a job. There are also ways to get a residency permit for family and reunification. Number 8 is the United States of America with $76,027 or GDP per capita. The U.S. is the largest economy in the world, accounting for about 20% of global GDP. The structure of the U.S. GDP per capita is dominated by services of more than 75% pharmaceuticals, oil and gas industry, auto and aircraft manufacturing account for 20%. According to the website 24/7 Wall Street, the United States is the second largest country in the world with the second largest reserves of natural resources. The compilers of the rating collected data on explored reserves and calculated their market price. The total value of U.S. natural resources exceeds $45 trillion, you guys. Is that not wild? Yikes. Value of resources. Russia has 75.7 trillion. U.S. 45 trillion. Saudi Arabia 34.4 trillion. Canada 33.2 trillion. Iran 27.3 trillion. The United States tops the list of countries with the largest number of billionaires. Forbes estimates that 735 of the world's 2,578 billionaires are American citizens. The minimum wage in the U.S. is $7.25 an hour. Doctors, cardiologists, anesthesiologists, surgeons, and psychiatrists earn the most in the country, according to various sources, from $217,000 to $350,000 a year. The next one, number 7, is Singapore with 79,576 GDP per capita. Singapore is one of the 4 Asian tigers, along with Hong Kong, Taiwan, and South Korea. A significant source of Singapore's income is the export of electronics, pharmaceutical products, but almost 70% of Singapore's GDP is provided by the service sector. Financial services account for 30% of revenue. I find that to be pretty interesting. The secret of Singapore's success is beneficial conditions for business and investors. The city leads in 2 rankings in terms of economic freedom, competitiveness, and income level of the population. The easiest way to get permanent residence in Singapore is to invest in a startup from $2.5 million, which is equivalent to 1.8 million USDA. Foreigners can also invest in exciting businesses. The main condition is that the average annual turnover for the company is over the past 3 years cannot be less than 50 million in Singapore money. Number 6 is Brunei, is Brunei, 79,816 GDP per capita, the richest country in Southeast Asia. The sources of the country's prosperity are oil and gas. The IMF estimates that hydrocarbon exports provide more than 70% of income. For comparison, the share of agriculture is less than 1% of GDP. Brunei is ruled by the Sultan, who also serves as Prime Minister, and then he also jams out to Sultans of Swing by Dire Straits, one of the great bands from the 80s. Just kidding, guys. More than 200,000 people live in the capital, Bandar Seri Begawan, which is half of the country's inhabitants. Kind of interesting. Education for citizens of the Sultanate is also free, and not only in Brunei. If a citizen of the country enters a foreign university, the cost of education is covered by the state. We need to get on board with that in the United States. Are you kidding me? Wow, it's interesting finding out this stuff and telling you guys about it, and then when I'm reading it to you, sometimes it's just so overwhelming when it hits me. It hits me harder the second time I read it, and it makes more sense for some reason. The next one is Qatar, and that's number 5 with 84,514 GDP per capita. The basis of Qatar's welfare is export of liquefied natural gas and oil. The state has no other natural resources. Most of the territory is occupied by the desert, where there's practically no precipitation and no fresh water. hydrocarbon revenues account for half of the country's GDP. That's kind of wild. Qatar ranks 18th with competitive in the Economic Competitive Index. One of the areas of public investment is logistics. Qatari deep water ports provide a quarter of the cargo flow to the Middle East. It's kind of unique and interesting. Doha Airport has become an international air hub used by 50 million people a year. In 1997, Qatar Airways had only 4 aircraft, and since 2011, it has topped the Skytrax ranking of the best airlines in the world, you guys. The government relies on high-tech industries, telecom, and IT. Qatari telecom operator Ooredoo was one of the first in the world to launch a 5G network. Qatar's development strategy provides for financial assistance not only to large holdings like Qatar Airways, but also to small and medium-sized businesses. Small businesses can attract loans at a rate of 2.5% to 7% per annum, whatever that means. I have no idea, you guys, sorry. The main condition for obtaining financing is that 51% of the company's shares must be owned by a Qatarian citizen. Foreigners make up 1.5 of the 2.7 million people in the population. Basically, temporary workers come to Qatar from India and Pakistan. There are 2 ways to obtain Qatari citizenship: marry a Qatarian or invest at least $3 million in local economy. Wow. To marry a foreign woman, a Qatari citizen must obtain permission from the authorities. If a Qatari woman marries a foreigner, her husband and children will not be able to claim citizenship of the country. Is that not wild? The U.S. needs to get back to that. You know, we've let people just quietly walk into this country for so long, and I find it repulsive that people, you know, they get here, they get their citizenship, and then you see them driving around their pickup truck because, you know, now they're making money and they're safe, so they're out driving around with their country's flag in the back of their pickup truck. They're so proud. Well, dude, if you're so proud, do me a favor. Head on back over there to your country, pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and find a way to make enough money that you can live that same life there and fly their flag there. Don't come to my country and fly your country's flag and think that I'm going to be proud of you and how you are. I mean, I understand that you have a different ethnicity than I do, but I am 100% from this country. You know, it is a privilege to be here. It's not a right. Number 4 is Switzerland with 96,390 GDP per capita. More than 70% of Switzerland's GDP comes from the service sector. The share of industry is 25% of agriculture is less than 1%. The financial sector employs less than 6% of the working population. About 75% of the Swiss work is tourism. And I'm telling you guys this stuff because these are the richest countries economically in the world. And Switzerland, I would love to live there, or Denmark. Those are 2 places that I find to be. Research them, you guys. You'll know. You'll see the difference between, you know, China and the U.S. as opposed to Denmark and Switzerland. You know, there's a reason why they're doing so well, and you don't have to pay taxes and the schools for free. There's a reason, you guys, because, you know, our government, you know, it came down to healthcare being free, and our government officials said, oh no, we don't want anything here to be free. You know, it's sad and it's unfortunate. Average salary in Switzerland is $6,538 per month, which is equivalent to 6,768 euros. A kindergarten teacher earns $4,900 a month, and a store clerk earns $4,400 a month. Wow, man. Switzerland is a country of immigrants. The share of foreigners living here is 25% of the 8.5 million people, according to HSBC bank estimates. The average income of foreigners who work in Swiss companies is $203,000 per year. It's funny they mentioned HSBC Bank. I once had a car through HSBC, and I had gotten divorced, and it wound up being included in the divorce, the car. Well, HSBC had all their money frozen by the federal government in the United States, and this is, I believe, like the year 2005 or six. I can't recall. It's right around there sometime. But you know what? I never had to pay a payment on that car for like 4 years, and I kid you not, like 2 in the morning on a random summer night, boom, 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 2 in the morning. There, sure enough, a guy came to repo the car. And I said, "Are you kidding me?" I said, "You know what? You just made my day." I was so excited. He told me, "Man, you were the nicest guy I've ever had to repo a car from." He said, "Most of the time people are pulling out guns and knives and trying to drive off while I'm trying to hook it up." It was funny, but it was interesting that this thing just said HSBC. Sorry, anyways. Back to this, the richest economic countries in the world. Number 3 is Norway with 99,481 GDP per capita. About 30% of Norway's GDP comes from the oil and gas industry. Norway exports iron, magnesium, titanium, and aluminum. The country has a developed fishing and woodworking industry. According to U.S. News and World Report, Norway is the 4th in terms of living standards and one of the countries with the highest life expectancy, 80 years for men and 84 years for women. That's a great one. Not quite close to the centurions. They live to be 120, no less than 120 years. The highest salaries are received by specialists employed in the field of mining. According to the Norwegian Central Bureau of Statistics, the average salary in the country is $50,790 per month. Average salary in the country, I would think that's per year. Maybe that's a misprint. I'm not sure. Equal to 4,940 euros. At the same time, men earn an average of 53,710 per year, and women 47,190 per year. In 2021, Norway was ranked 2nd in the list of countries with the lowest level of corruption. Man, the U.S. needs to take some notes on that. Norway is in the top 10 countries where it is fastest to obtain citizenship by naturalization. To apply for citizenship, foreigners must obtain a residence permit and then live in the country for 7 years. That's pretty cool, you know. Number 2 is Ireland. It's a 101,509 GDP per capita. So that's 101,509 GDP per capita. Ireland ranks 2nd in the top 10 richest nations in the world, according to IMF. Agriculture, food, textile industries, IT, and mechanical engineering help the Irish economy to overtake Singapore, Qatar, and even the US of A. The country has developed the production of medicines and medical equipment. The United Kingdom is Ireland's main trading partner with the U.S., according to 17% of trade, and Germany for 11%. I think that's pretty awesome. International Living has included Ireland in the top 15 countries most comfortable for retirees to live. The average pension in the country is $1,600 per month. That's pretty interesting, right? There are several ways to obtain an Irish passport: by marriage, by naturalization. Number 1, you guys, on this list of economic powerhouses, the little tiny country is Luxembourg with 135,046 GDP per capita. Luxembourg is the world's richest country and world's largest bank center. More than 200 banks and 1,000 investment funds operate in the capital. The high performance of Luxembourg is partly due to the fact that citizens of neighboring countries work in the Duchy, France, Germany, and Belgium. Duchy. Duchy, geez. Countries work in the Duchy, France, Germany, and Belgium. Foreign workers contribute to GDP growth, but are not included in the per capita calculation. Yeah, because they don't live there. That makes sense. The minimum wage in the country is $2,257 per month. Adult unskilled workers can count on such an amount. The average monthly salary is 5,000 in euros. The highest paid specialists work in insurance companies, banks, IT, and power industries. Luxembourg is the top 5 of the international tax competitiveness Competitiveness Index. According to the newspaper Le Monde, 90% of companies registered in the country are owned by foreigners. Wow. Luxembourg attracts foreign businessmen with preferential taxation. Non-resident companies pay taxes only on those incomes that are received in the territory. Thank you guys for listening. This is the Only You podcast, and I'm getting ready to tell you about an inquiry into the nature and causes of the wealth of nations. I would give this book it's kind of a hard book to follow. I mean, it's interesting. I'm just going to do a synopsis of it. Of the division of labor. Division of labor has caused a greater increase in production than any other factor. The diversification is greater for nations, is greatest with nations with more industry and improvement, and is responsible for universal opulence. Opulence actually means great wealth and luxury. Thank you guys for listening to the Only You podcast. Again, opulence is it means pretty much wealth in those countries. This is in part due to increased quality of production, but more importantly, because of increased efficiency of production, leading to a higher nominal output of units produced per time unit. Agriculture is less amenable than manufacturing to division of labor. Hence, rich nations are not so far ahead of poor nations in agriculture as in manufacturing. Of the principle which gives occasion to division of labor arises not from innate wisdom, but from humans' propensity to barter. The division of labor is limited by the extent of the market. Limited opportunity for exchange discourages division of labor because water, carriage, like transportation, extends the market. Division of labor, with its improvements, comes earliest in cities near waterways. Civilization begins around the highly navigable Mediterranean Sea. Of the origin and use of money, with division of labor, the produce of one's own labor can fill only a small part of one's needs. Different commodities have served as a common medium of exchange, but all nations have finally settled on metals, which are durable and divisible for this purpose. Before coinage, or money, or tangible hard metal money, people had to weigh and assay with each exchange or risk the grotesque frauds and impositions. Thus nations began stamping metal on one side only to ascertain purity, or on all sides to stipulate purity and amount. The quantity of real metal in coins has diminished due to avarice and injustice of princes and sovereign states, enabling them to pay their debts in appearance only, and to the defraudment of creditors. Of the wages of labor, in this section, Smith describes how the wages of labor are dictated primarily by the compensation among laborers and masters. When laborers bid against one another for limited opportunities for employment, the wages of labor collectively fall. Whereas when employers compete against one another for limited supplies of labor, the wages of labor competitively rise. And we all seen that, and I wanted to say this too. We all seen that right there with the competitive wages during COVID. I mean, it used to be my job paid it started like the high teens, early 20s. Hell, it's all the way up to 30 now. Cut and dry. But I'm watching on Indeed, and the prices are dropping again because everybody's going back to work slowly. However, this process of competition is often circumvented by combinations among laborers and among masters. When laborers combine and no longer bid against one another, their wages rise, whereas when masters combine, wages fall. In Smith's day, organized labor was dealt with very harshly by the law. Smith himself wrote about the severity of such laws against worker actions and made it a point to contrast the clamor of the masters against workers' association, while associations and collusions of the masters are never heard by the people, though such actions are always and everywhere taking place. Yeah, for real. I worked for a family member one time building decks, and he thought because I was underage and I really did work a whole 8 hours that he didn't have to pay me as much. And I mean, I lost it on him. I said, dude, you're not going to pay everybody else and then pay me whatever you feel like. You know, we rarely hear it has been said of the combination of masters through frequently of those of working men, but whose ever imaginations upon this account that masters rarely combined is an ignorant of the world as of the subject. Masters are always and everywhere in a sort of tactic, but constant and uniform combination, not to raise the wages of labor above their actual rate. Masters, too, sometimes enter into peculiar combinations to sink the wages of labor even below the rate. And you guys, to be a master at anything, it takes 10,000 hours, they say, to become a master at any given task. And whether that's riding a bike, you know, driving a car, or your job. Yeah, I already read that. These are always conducted with the utmost silence and secrecy till the moment of execution. And when the workmen yield, as they sometimes do, without resistance, though severely felt by them, they are never heard by other people. In contrast, when workers combine, the masters never cease to call aloud for the assistance of civil magistrate and the rigorous execution of those laws which have been enacted with so much severity against the combination of servants, laborers, and journeymen. In societies where the amount of labor exceeds the amount of revenue available for wage labor, competition among workers is greater than the competition among employees, and wages fall. Conversely, where revenue is abundant, labor wages rise. Smith argues that therefore labor wages only rise as a result of greater revenue disposition to pay for labor. Smith thought labor the same as many other commodities in this respect. The demand for men like that for any other commodity necessarily regulates the production of men, quickens it when it goes on too slowly, and stops it when it advances too fast. It is this demand which regulates and determines the state of propagation in all the different countries of the world, in North America, in Europe, and in China, which renders its rapidly progressive in the first, slow and gradual in the second, and although stationary in the last. However, the amount of revenue must increase constantly in proportion to the amount of labor for wages to remain high. Smith illustrates this by juxtaposing, whatever that word is, it's juxtaposing, I've never heard of it, England with the North American colonies. In England, there is more revenue than in the colonies, but wages are low because more workers flock to new employment opportunities caused by the large amount of revenue. So workers eventually compete against each other as much as they did before. By contrast, as capital continues to flow to colonial economies, at least at the same rate that population increases to fill out these excess capital, wages were still higher than in England. You guys, thank you for listening to the Only You podcast. And I find The Wealth of Nations to be a really great read. Thank you for tuning in today. I do love you guys for following me and, you know, just always being there listening and waiting for me to say something crazy. But I do want to share with you some coping skills when you're dealing with financial situations that are out of your control. One is identify top sources of financial stress. If financial anxiety is weighing on you, start identifying, and this is from the Bank of America, you guys.com. If financial anxiety is weighing on you, start by identifying the specific issues keeping you up at night, whether the problem is credit card debt or upcoming bill payments. Pinpoint the source of your stress will help you determine your next move. Write down your biggest money challenges. 1. 2 is keep the list short to help you feel less overwhelmed. And 3, revisit your list every 3 to 6 months or as circumstances change. And remember, like I say in every podcast before this, only idiots write stuff down because then they never forget. And number 2 is create a monthly budget. A lot of you out there are making money thinking, oh, well, it's no big deal. There's money in the bank. Who cares? Well, yeah, you keep playing that game and you're going to come to a point where the money's going to run out. You're going to not know why because you're not paying attention. You're not being an adult. And you're not being your own brother's keeper. You know, you got to watch over your life, your money, and everything, because if you don't, I mean, life's about accumulating money, but then again, it's about, you know, just living a good life and spending it while you're here because you can't take it with you, you know. Create a monthly budget. A budget is a powerful tool for taking control and understanding your finances. It can help you avoid spending more than you have, as well as save for future goals. Once you have a full picture of where your money is going every month, you can look for opportunities to redirect some of it to the areas causing your financial stress. 1, start with your net income, the amount you take home every month after taxes. 2, write down all your expenses from rent to mortgage and to your daily cup of coffee, soda, energy drink, whatever. Set up automatic payments for reoccurring bills and savings. 4 is sign up to get alerts if your balance falls below a certain level. So then, you know, because once it falls and there's zero, you're going to get dinged with a $35 late fee. That's more money on top of you not having any money to begin with. 3 is make the most of your income. You know, savor that stuff. When money is tight, you may think you don't have enough to deal with your financial problems. However, it's important to make the most of the income you do have. Know that small steps add up. You may not be able to cut any one expense by $500 a month, but you may be able to identify that you can cut by $100 each. 1, categorize your spending into needs and wants. 2, examine your spending patterns to identify ways to save on small daily expenses. 3, consider modifying your budget to prioritize goals that will help ease your overall financial stress, such as paying off a high-interest credit card. And number 4, you guys, to me, out of all this on, you know, Bank of America's site, this one, to me, was the most important at age 18 when I had to get out. I had to be on my own. I had to do it all because, you know, at 18, for a man, you got to do it. I need to go get my own place. I need my own car. I need my own everything, you know. Build an emergency fund. Now, how I started doing this, I started the envelope system. I put on one envelope, emergency fund. I put on another envelope, my vacation fund. And then these were all things that I wanted to do and needed to do. And I'm telling you, that first year of being on my own, paying my own bills, all of a sudden at the end of the year, I had a cousin move in with me and I started taking care of him. And then all of a sudden he's still living at home, you guys. I'm serious. He's still living at home. And it's like, dang, man. You know, I didn't have parents to lean on. I didn't have parents to hold my hand until I was 50. You know, my dad died at 5. I've been out here doing this by myself. I had to figure it out. Having money set aside for an emergency, you know, it's such a, well, yeah, having money set aside for an emergency, such as like car repairs, job loss, or illness, can go a long way towards relieving financial anxiety. Because you know you've had financial anxiety. I once, when cell phones first came out, I'll share this story. When cell phones first came out, my aunt had AT&T. She got my cousin a phone. Well, he was just like me. He was 18, had to get out there and get on his own, so he did. Well, he was over there at his new apartment, and he decided to go out and buy an internet adapter and hook it up to his telephone and then start downloading movies. At the end of the month, AT&T tried to debit my aunt's account for $9,989, and I'm not even exaggerating. It was the full amount. The owner of AT&T literally called my aunt personally and asked her, "Ma'am, would you please meet me for breakfast tomorrow morning?" And she's like, "Sure, where?" And he's like, "Oh, right there in your hometown." He's like, "I'm flying in tonight." And she's like, "Sure." So in reality, he flew out, met with her, shook her hand, and he told her, "I am not charging you a dime because you actually made us aware of a problem we had no idea could ever even happen at this point, because cell phones were new. And he had breached their security so hard that he knew that other people could be out there doing that. Nobody had done it yet, so he wanted to put a stop to it right away. And he gave my aunt a $10,000 free pass, even when my cousin was creating he was breaking piracy laws too, I do believe. Pretty wild story, but she had anxiety, financial anxiety. And man, when she came to my house that morning, my aunt was a hot mess. I mean, crying, angry, screaming, crying. It was wild, man. She actually made me drive her over to his apartment, and then she climbed through his kitchen window and unlocked the front door, and I got to watch her waylay his ass. Oh, man. Anyways, back onto this. Build an emergency fund. However, building an emergency fund can seem overwhelming, especially one with enough to cover 3 to 6 months of expenses. Don't get hung up on the amount. That's right. That's what I used to do too. I'd get hung up on my emergency fund amount, and it would always screw with me, because once you get hung up on that amount, it's just like how, oh, I got to go downstairs and get this one thing, and then you walk through the doorway and you're like, what was I not coming down here for? It's the same thing. Your mind's going to register that you already did it because you're so worried about that amount. You're never going to get there. What's important is that you consistently are setting money aside. Using your budget to determine how much you can contribute each month towards savings after accounting for the expenses on your needs list. 2, prioritize building up 3 to 6 months of living expenses before you start looking at longer-term saving goals. And 3, set up automatic transfers from your checking to your savings account. And that's a big, huge plus. Once I started doing the transfer, in reality, I don't transfer it to a savings account. I transfer $20 every check to Robinhood, and I invest $20 every time. And I've been doing that for 10 years, and it's paid off. 5 is be strategic about reducing debt. Don't think this is a joke, and don't keep on spending on those credit cards. Cut them up. Get rid of them. Save that one that has the lowest interest rate. Put it away and have it for an emergency. Put it in your lockbox. Don't touch it. Credit card debt is a common source of financial stress. Every month I'm stressed out about credit cards, you guys, because I got 20 of them. It's not fun. It sucks. Not only is it expensive, it can also get in the way of your savings goals. The anxiety antidote, a plan to pay off the debt. If you have balances on multiple cards, consider using the snowball method, paying off your debt one by one, focusing on the smallest first, or the high rate method, concentrating on the cards with the highest rates first. Make the minimum payments on each of your cards. Make the minimum payment on each of your cards. 2, pick a payment strategy and stick with it. 3 is avoid taking on new credit card debt. And number 6 is the most important too that I'm going to tell you, really, is consider outside help. I hired a company out of Florida called Cake Credit probably about 4 years ago. Man, did they ever shoot my credit score through the roof. Like, they taught me so much about my credit, I had no idea, Like, there's certain things that when like medical bills get dinged on your credit, if this creditor keeps harassing you, you need to like do the 4 things, get a hold of them, ask them for the exact name of the creditor, ask them for the exact amount, and then ask them also for a copy of the original contract. They can't, dude. I'm telling you. My homeboy Brian's a lawyer, and that's all he does is take people to court. All he does is buy debt and make people pay him money, because he buys it for pennies on the dollar. A $500 debt, he pays $20 for it. And then you pay it, and he'll make sure, because he has ways. When you get that letter from a lawyer in the mail, you're scared. You're going to pay it right away. And that's how he makes money. He's making fat loot like that. So remember that stuff. And, take that serious. If you got to reach out to somebody outside, monitor your progress, make adjustments as your income, spending, and goals change. Seek help if you're struggling to keep up with minimum payments. There's tons of financial advisors out there and people that are willing to walk you through how to save your money and keep your money. Thank you guys for listening to the Only You podcast. And I thought that Adam Smith wrote a really, really great book here. And there is so much in this book. Like, the book's really old, but it's so relevant to right now and all the stuff that's going on. So you guys run out there, grab it, read it. It's only 99 cents, but it can teach you so much stuff. Again, thanks for listening. Thank you for following me. Thank you for sharing me. And, thank you for all your comments. I got an email from another fan, hey, Mike G, you know who you are. I appreciate that you felt connected to my last podcast and that my handwriting one really blew you away. That was super cool. Thank you so much, and keep your head up, y'all. Keep on doing what you're doing and don't run out of luck.